Saludos a todas y todos.
Greetings, everyone. I would like to start my presentation. Can you see my screen? Yes? Perfect. I would like to start by presenting this theoretical analysis. I think this is very important when we talk about gender. We cannot only talk about binary gender anymore. When we talk about gender, we cannot talk any longer from one single dimension. We also need to speak about intersection and intersectionality. So this new structure creates a certain dispute. What does it mean to be a man and what does it mean to be a woman? We don't have one single gender, a binary sex between men and women. And when we talk about gender, we cannot talk any longer between the female side. We cannot only speak about the female side and the male side. This concept is no longer valid, it's something that is questioned. And I think it's very important to think about it when we talk about gender. So gender is not simply a dual thing. It's not only man, woman, it's not only male, female. It's not simply a one-dimensional idea. There are intersections, there is intersectionality, and there are multiple characteristics of discrimination. All these different characteristics related to discrimination are based on patriarchy, the patriarchal world. Patriarchy as a political, economic, social conception of the world, which is based on women and female exclusion. Women and females are excluded from power sources, and anything that is female, anything that is related to women must be excluded from power. To understand gender and intersectionality, it is important to understand that historically, this subject has also had an impact on how work is divided among women and men. This has had an impact on relationships between human beings, and this has also had an impact on private and public lives. Public life is separated from private life, and private life is normally related to family, while public life is related to community. But there's one more factor in this subject. Reproduction, not only biological reproduction, but social reproduction, everyday reproduction, is what we have historically referred to as care work. Care work is fundamental. It's central to the functioning of society, and this is normally the responsibility of women. It also has a female characteristic. People think that care is something that needs to be taken care of by women. So all this is part of this structure of patriarchal discrimination. At the same time, this is also related to women who started working in public spaces with Industrial Revolution, But women started working in the public sphere as cheap laborers. When women started working in public spaces, it was as subordinates of men. And this is something that has been like that for centuries and centuries. And unfortunately, it's something that we still see nowadays, and it's quite a current subject. So let's see the impact of all these on the world of work, so that we can explain specifically how women are seen in the LRG sector. So discrimination has several dimensions, and those dimensions are linked to other kinds of discrimination related to what I just said before, intersectionality. So there is a separation, a vertical and a horizontal segregation in employment. There's a segregation in employment. Women, and this is not by chance, by the way, it's not because women have decided to do so, it's not because women can only do that, but there are clear political, economic, and social structures that are pushing women to those jobs. Women are segregated, both horizontally, as I said before, and when I'm talking about horizontal segregation, I mean jobs, professions, and I mean that those professions are the ones that are related mainly to care, because care is the area where people have put women from a historical point of view. So women who normally are at home, they clean the house, they cook, they iron, they sew, they teach, they take care of the children. So the things that they do in the home, when they get out of the home, they start doing that same thing outside the home. That's what they do in the world of work. That's what they do as a job. So most women work on those areas that are a simple extension of the care work they do at the home. For example, nursing, cleaning, cooking, taking care of children and the elderly, working in the textile industry, etc. So that horizontal segregation is still there, and that is why women work mainly on those sectors. But women work mainly on those sectors due to the fact that women are on the lower stages of the working pyramid. So what I mean is that women have jobs and professions where they don't have much responsibility. They are not directors, they don't have decision-making capabilities, positions, they are not managers, they are on the lower level jobs and positions. And that's where women mostly work. It must be said, however, that that kind of work is really the basis, the real basis of the world of work. So that's what we see. We see women working in local and regional governments on that kind of jobs. So of course, women work mainly on administrative roles. They are secretaries, for example, and they work as assistants, they work in care. And when they work for public companies, for local and regional governments or in public service, they normally work in areas related to education, health, healthcare, social work, and care of elderly people. And they also work in companies, for cleaning companies that offer cleaning services to public companies, or for example in parks, streets, and open areas. That's where we mainly see women.
So patriarchy has actually stated that all these jobs have a lower value because usually they're related to a lower level of professionalism. So obviously, this also has consequences on the economic remuneration of those jobs. So we see that whenever there is vertical segregation on gender basis, even when jobs have a similar level, the remuneration is not the same. And that's even more the case when the segregation is horizontal. Let's take professions, the health sector, for instance. If we have a wage regime in the public sector, usually health and education have lower wages than other more masculine sectors. So we see that the salary gap can also be reflected, so that wage difference can be due to gender, but also to the profession, and it can also be due to the place, to actually to the geographic designation where that work is carried out. Usually when local governments are bigger, when they have a bigger infrastructure, when they have higher incomes, the level of income is higher than when all these professions, all these jobs are carried out in different and smaller territories. So we see that the wage scale is different, but definitely the biggest feature for that wage gap is gender. We've seen that there's also a sanction, so to speak, in the marketplace when women get pregnant. And also family responsibilities are penalized. Let's not forget that women are usually in charge of the care of children and elderly people. And that happens in the family. So we know that maternity is penalized. And that's in spite of the fact that there might be some maternity leaves that are stated by law. But the truth is that in so many countries, women have a huge loss of income, and they also suffer from slower progression in their careers when they become mothers. There's another element that is also very powerful, and it's violence and harassment. I think that now we talk a lot more about violence and harassment in the workplace, and it's been on the table for a few years now, but we don't talk that much about violence and harassment at home. In any case, gender is the one first dimension, but of course we've seen that there are also other intersections with other features that make the discrimination even worse. So there's a label segregation where there are sectors where there's a concentration of women. There are certain jobs in certain sectors where there is an abundance of women. And we see that the remuneration is lower in those sectors. And even when it's the same job or job of same value or equal value, the remuneration is lower. And on top of that, we're adding another layer of violence and harassment. Daria interrupts, Veronica, it's very interesting, but we need to wrap up. Okay, so I'll be a little bit faster. I wanted to tell you that it's very, very important when we talk about rights that we see the difference between collective rights and individual rights. We've seen the Glasgow strike. We've just seen the video. What we've seen there is the importance of collective rights, how important collective rights are. Trade union rights, freedom of association, freedom of strike, all those collective rights are basic, are fundamental to actually materialize individual rights afterwards. And when we talk about individual rights from a gender perspective, we see that all those are also based on international law. And I'm coming to an end. What are the collective conventions, all those international conventions that are based on collective rights, but that also have consequences on our individual rights? So we talked about Convention 87, 98, 151, and 152. Carlos mentioned all of these. He even mentioned that the expert commission on the application of standards has established international law that says that workers, both men and women, from local and regional governments are allowed to apply Convention 98. So the relevant convention for us is Convention 98. It's not the same convention that applies to the public function workers from the central government. And we can see here the level of ratification of the different conventions throughout the world. Convention 98 is one of the most ratified conventions in the world, whereas Convention 151 and 152 barely have 30 and 26% each of ratification. So we see that there's also a tipping point here. And I'm really coming to an end now. What I wanted to tell you is that it's very important that we have collective rights so we can realize and materialize individual rights in the workplace. And in particular, all those rights that have this gender dimension embedded on them, like Convention 100 on equal remuneration, equal remuneration for a job of the same value, Convention 111, no discrimination, Convention 156 on family responsibilities, and Convention 183, protection of maternity. And then let's not forget the new convention on violence and harassment, Convention 190. Thank you so much. Thank you, Daria.